Tonight, the world is holding its breath. A tenuous calm is settling over the Middle East after 12 days of intense conflict. Former US President Donald Trump made a surprise announcement on social media. He declared that Israel and Iran had agreed to a complete and total ceasefire. He even gave the conflict a name: the 12-day war. This news came as a shock to many. It offered the first real sign of de-escalation in a rapidly worsening situation. The fighting has been fierce and the stakes could not be higher. This ceasefire, if it holds, could pull the region back from the brink of a much larger, more devastating war. The details of the ceasefire are complex and carefully timed. It is not a simple, simultaneous halt to the fighting. Instead, it is designed as a two-stage process. The agreement outlines 2 consecutive 12-hour periods of calm. The first period was set to begin with Iran ceasing its military actions around midnight on Monday, June 24, 2025, Eastern Daylight Time. This would only happen after both sides completed any missions already in progress. Following Iran's compliance, Israel would then observe its own 12-hour ceasefire. Only after a full 24 hours of quiet would the war be considered officially over, a fragile peace for a volatile region. However, the path to this truce is filled with uncertainty. Official statements from the involved parties have been mixed, reflecting the deep mistrust between them. While the announcement offered hope, Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, initially cast doubt on the deal. He posted on social media that there was no formal ceasefire agreement, yet he offered a conditional promise. He stated that if Israel stopped its attacks by 4 a.m. Tehran time, Iran had no intention to continue our response afterwards. This leaves the door open for peace, but also shows how easily the truce could fall apart. A final decision, he noted, would be made later. For its part, Israel has remained largely silent on the specifics of the announcement. Officials have been cautious, not wanting to declare victory or defeat prematurely. The Israeli government's primary concern has been its security. The past 12 days have seen a significant military effort from the Israeli Defense Forces. The quiet from Jerusalem is likely a strategic move. They are waiting to see if Iran truly honors the terms laid out in the agreement. For the millions of people living in both countries, this period of waiting is filled with both anxiety and a desperate hope for a lasting peace and a return to some semblance of normal life. To understand this ceasefire, we have to look back at how this all started. The conflict ignited on June 12, 2025. On that day, Israel launched a series of what it called preemptive strikes. These attacks targeted dozens of Iranian military sites. The scope was significant, aiming at critical infrastructure and, most importantly, facilities connected to Iran's nuclear program. The Israeli government justified this aggressive action by citing intelligence. They claimed to have proof that Iran had significantly advanced its capabilities and was closer than ever to obtaining a nuclear weapon. This move was a dramatic escalation of the long-simmering shadow war between the two nations. Iran's reaction was swift and furious. The leadership in Tehran immediately denied Israel's claims about its nuclear program. They have long maintained that their nuclear ambitions are for peaceful energy purposes only. From their perspective, the Israeli strikes were an unprovoked act of aggression. They viewed it as a blatant violation of their national sovereignty. In response, Iran vowed to retaliate. The rhetoric from both sides became increasingly hostile. The international community watched with growing alarm as the two regional powers traded threats, pushing the Middle East closer to a full-scale confrontation that many had feared for years. The initial days of the conflict were marked by a dangerous back and forth. Israel continued its air campaign, targeting what it described as strategic military assets inside Iran. The goal was to degrade Iran's ability to strike back and to set back its nuclear program. Iran, in turn, launched its own attacks. It used a combination of drones and ballistic missiles. These were aimed at targets within Israel, testing the limits of its sophisticated air defense systems. Each attack was met with another, creating a perilous cycle of retaliation. The world could only watch as the violence spiraled, with each side determined not to be the last to act. This conflict was not fought in a vacuum. It represents the culmination of years of tension, covert operations, and proxy battles. Israel has long seen Iran's nuclear program as an existential threat. It has also worked to counter Iran's influence across the region from Syria to Lebanon. Iran, meanwhile, views Israel as an illegitimate state and a tool of Western interference in the Middle East. This deep-seated animosity has fueled a shadow war for decades. The 12-day conflict brought this hidden war out into the open, forcing a direct and dangerous military confrontation between the two powerful adversaries. For much of the conflict, the United States maintained a position of cautious observation. Washington provided diplomatic support for its ally Israel, but initially refrained from direct military involvement. However, that changed just 2 days before the ceasefire was announced. The situation escalated when the United States decided to enter the conflict directly. U.S. forces launched their own strikes against 3 Iranian nuclear targets. This marked a significant turning point. It transformed the conflict from a regional dispute into a confrontation with a global superpower, dramatically raising the stakes for everyone involved and pushing the situation toward a critical tipping point. The American intervention was a clear message to Tehran. The U.S. was demonstrating its commitment to preventing Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. It also signaled unwavering support for Israel's security. The decision to use military force was not taken lightly. It followed days of intense diplomatic discussions and intelligence assessments. The White House aimed to deliver a decisive blow to Iran's nuclear infrastructure. The hope was that this would compel Iran to reconsider its position and come to the negotiating table. However, it was a high-risk strategy, one that could have easily led to a much wider and more unpredictable war across the entire region. Iran's response to the American strikes was bold and dangerous. On Monday, June 23, 2025, Iran fired a volley of missiles at the Al Udeid air base in Qatar. This base is not just any military installation, it is the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East. It serves as a central hub for American operations throughout the region. The attack was a direct challenge to the United States. It was Iran's way of showing that it would not be intimidated and was willing to target American assets directly. It was a moment of extreme tension, as a successful strike could have caused massive casualties and triggered an overwhelming U.S. response. Fortunately, the attack on the Al Udeid base was a failure. The United States, with critical assistance from its partner Qatar, managed to intercept the incoming Iranian missiles. No significant damage was reported, and there were no American casualties. One source close to the operation described the event as a failed retaliation. While disaster was averted, the incident highlighted the very real danger of miscalculation. It showed how quickly the conflict could expand beyond Israel and Iran. This failed attack may have been the final sobering event that pushed all sides to seek a way out of the escalating violence and accept the terms of a ceasefire. With the guns falling silent, a fragile hope for peace is emerging. This ceasefire, if it holds, offers a crucial opportunity for diplomacy to take the lead. For the people living in Israel, Iran, and neighboring countries, the past 12 days have been filled with fear and uncertainty. The constant threat of missile attacks and the sounds of air raid sirens have become a part of daily life. The end of hostilities means a chance to return to normalcy. Children can go back to school, businesses can reopen, and families can feel a sense of security that has been absent. This pause in fighting is more than just a strategic maneuver, it is a lifeline for millions. The ceasefire's importance extends far beyond the borders of Israel and Iran. The Middle East is a complex and interconnected region. A war between these two major powers could have easily drawn in other nations, leading to a catastrophic regional conflict. The stability of the global economy is also at stake, as the region is a critical hub for oil and gas supplies. The fighting had already begun to affect global markets. A lasting peace is therefore essential not just for the well-being of those directly involved, but for international security and economic stability. This truce provides a vital off-ramp from a path of destruction. Of course, the challenges ahead are immense. The deep-seated distrust and ideological differences between Israel and Iran will not disappear overnight. This ceasefire is not a peace treaty, it is a temporary halt to military operations. The fundamental issues that led to this conflict, particularly Iran's nuclear program and its regional activities, remain unresolved. For this truce to transform into something more permanent, it will require sustained and intensive diplomatic efforts. International mediators, including the United States and other world powers, will have a critical role to play in facilitating dialogue and building confidence between the two sides. Ultimately, the success or failure of this moment rests on the choices that will be made in the coming days and weeks. Will the leaders of Israel and Iran choose the path of de-escalation and negotiation, or will they return to the cycle of violence? The international community must encourage dialogue and provide a framework for a long-term solution. The people of the region have endured decades of conflict and instability. They deserve a future free from the constant threat of war. This ceasefire, as fragile as it may be, represents a glimmer of hope that a more peaceful future is possible if the opportunity is seized.